My fiance left me for the one that got away, but now wants me back. My fiance and I had been together for 3 years. He was my first boyfriend. We laughed, cried, worried, and were happy together. Our families had mixed really well. Our moms became close friends really fast. He was my best friend, my confidant, my support, my comfort. I looked at him and could see our future together. God, I'm even crying remembering one time we took a blanket, went outside, and looked up at the stars like in some book. I never thought something like this could happen to me. The man I loved could have never done anything like this to me. It all started about 2 months ago. His ex, high school sweetheart, together 7 years, moved back to our country and wanted to catch up with Mark. He told me they broke up because they were unable to sustain a long-distance relationship when she left to pursue postgraduate studies. They had been in contact for about 5 years. She sent him an email, he showed it to me, and it was completely platonic. She was just curious about what he had become. He asked me if he could meet her, and I said yes. I trusted him. So he went. But when he came back, he was a bit withdrawn. He was usually really chatty, but he was dismissive when I asked him how it went. I let it go. However, the following weeks, he was often on his phone. He picked random fights with me and didn't look me in the eyes even when we slept together. Didn't whisper loving words either. I'm really touchy and clingy, and in our 3 years together, he had never once recoiled or refused my embrace, but he started doing it. I usually hug him like a koala when he comes back from work. I'm a bit childish, I know, but he only let me do it twice. It was such a sudden change. I asked him what was wrong, but he just said he wasn't feeling too good nowadays. On Saturday, I went to visit his grandma and we usually knit together. She taught me, and I was gone the whole day. I feel really close to her because she adopted me easily and reminds me of my own who died when I was in high school. When I came back, I found him packing his stuff. My whole world fell apart. He was being so cowardly. He told me he was sorry for making me suffer like this, but sometimes life gives you a second chance and you have to recognize it for what it is. That he loved me, but when he met his ex, he realized that the feelings weren't the same. He said he regretted letting her go, that he had found himself again, that it had been a difficult choice for him, but he had to take this chance. His ex wanted him back. She had realized what she had lost and risked losing for good when he told her he was getting married. He supposedly refused her at first, but as time passed and they talked together, his old feelings came back. He hoped I would forgive him one day and understand. I cried as he was talking. It sounds stupid, but it was as if it was a stranger in front of me. He said he would still pay rent and part of the bills until our lease was up and I can find another place. He makes a lot more than me and I wouldn't be able to afford living in our apartment on my own. I begged him not to make this mistake, that he was being fooled by an idealized memory of their past together and that he was having cold feet. But he was like a wall. He didn't even look at me. At about 10 p.m., there was a truck outside with one of his friends waiting for him. He apparently came to help him move. I wasn't really close with that particular friend, but he did seem sorry for me. Mark hugged me goodbye and left. I hadn't cried that hard in years. I slept in our spare room, not to feel the emptiness of our room with his things gone. I sunk to the deepest pathetic I've been and tried to call him, but it went to voicemail. I had no idea where he went, but assumed he was now living with his ex after 3 weeks of talking again. How ridiculous. I'm really lucky to have supportive friends and family. My best friend even moved in for 5 days. My parents wanted me back home with them, but I wasn't ready to leave. Mark is a bit messy and I'm a manic, so it feels weird having everything perfectly neat. I missed his messiness. It was as if he was the one making our house a home. He used to joke about me wanting the house to look like it was on sale or in a catalog. Not waking up to make breakfast, not seeing him read lying on the sofa while I studied felt weird. Not buying his favorite snack or powder proteins when doing groceries felt weird. I felt really lost at first. It was like grieving. Usually when people break up, the relationship was going south, but to me, it came out of nowhere. I still loved him. I was still planning the wedding and working on my side to build our future together. It was all gone in a matter of a day. I wish I had been smarter and refused to meet his one that got away. His family was dumbfounded. I still went to see his grandma and she told me that he was a fool and that he would come back crawling to me. She was the first person who managed to make me laugh. His mom, my mom, and I started making calls to cancel all reservations. Luckily, the store accepted to take back the dress. We didn't pay much for the location as we canceled early. Next was to inform the guest. He had been gone for about 3 weeks then. His family was furious with him, so they didn't contact him much. The only contact I had with him was a signed check he made to cover the wedding cancellation. However, about a week ago, I received a letter from him. He apologized for leaving me like this, said he made the biggest mistake of his life, that he couldn't even believe what he had done, that he was writing me this letter because he didn't have the courage to face me. You were right. I was running after a perfect relationship that had never existed. I regret it so much. I thought I was in love with her, but in reality, I was in love with what she represented. My younger self with no responsibility and only dreams. I had cold feet and got afraid of moving forward into this new segment of my life. I couldn't stop thinking about you when I was with her. She is not you. She doesn't know me or love me like you. She doesn't smell like you. I missed hearing you sing randomly throughout the day. I missed having someone nagging me to pick up my stuff. I missed planning Halloween parties for the kids with you. At the time I'm writing this letter, we would have probably been decoration shopping had I not been a fool. Everyone told me I was being a blind fool. I would do anything to go back to the past and slap some sense into myself. I would do anything for you to forgive me. I know we have already started canceling everything, but I'm ready to pay for everything myself. You can date someone else to even the scores if you want, as long as you come back to me. He kept on with apologies and begging me to forgive him. Now, I told my family, left friends out for the moment, and his mom and grandma. Grandma had a very satisfying told you so moment. However, she is rooting for me to forgive him. His mom was supposed to send a formal letter to guests to tell them the wedding was off, but now is waiting for my answer. I don't know what to do. I love him with all of my heart, but what he did to me, I don't know if I can get over it. He made me feel worthless. He threw me away as if I was no one to him after 3 years. He gave up on us for some ghost from his past when we were at our happiest. If he can leave me when we are doing so good, how will we sustain a marriage? Will he leave the moment things get hard? He hurt me so badly and expects me to forgive him. He wants us to meet on Sunday, but I'm not sure. I'm willing to. I need some perspective. What would you do in my situation?
My husband's ugly best friend ruined our engagement, so I laughed whilst he got deported. Story time. So me and my fiance Steve have been planning to get married. We have been together for 5 years, so agreed it was time to tie the knot. But there was just one problem. My husband's friend, Steve. Steve was from another country and he'd been living in ours for a few years. And he was legal because he was married, obviously, to this girl called Amy. Amy loved this guy so much, but I don't even think Steve liked her. I think he only married her so that he could get a green card. And Steve, I'm not gonna lie, he got lucky to find someone that would marry him. He is not a nice person. He is a solid 4 to 3 out of 10 on a good day. He has the personality of a wet leaf and overall just had really bad hygiene. I don't even really know how my husband was even friends with him because, ugh. So one day I was at home and I could hear my fiance on the phone to Steve. Steve was boasting about how he'd been cheating on Amy with another woman. He was like, I am so proud of being able to get another woman. I was shooketh. This man was cheating on what I can only say would be the only woman that would ever want to marry him. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of surprised that there's another woman on this planet that would want to get with him. I didn't really care too much for Steve's words, but it was my fiance's response that really wound me up. My fiance was cheering on Steve, saying how he deserves more than one woman and every man deserves to have more than one woman in his life. I have never felt rage like it. I just kept thinking that if my fiance was applauding someone for cheating, then he would probably cheat on me too. So as soon as my fiance left the room, I told him that I had heard everything and that I could not be with somebody that supported cheating the way that he just did. He then started spouting all of this bullshit about how he was gonna make it up to me at our wedding. I legit laughed in his face. I was like, you think there's a wedding, babe? This wedding is off, so you can go and tell all your friends and family to return the wedding gifts. So after ending it with my fiance, I wasn't done yet. I decided that I was gonna call up Amy, Steve's wife. Took my big old spoon and started stirring the pot. When she picked up the phone, I told her word for word the conversation that she'd had with my fiance. And as you can probably guess, she was furious. And I was like, babe, I'm so sorry. What are you gonna do? Do you think you can work past this? She's like, no, I know exactly what I'm gonna do. And I was like, ooh. But they say, hell knows no fury, home's gone. So when Steve got home that day, Amy slammed divorce papers down on the table. And apparently, Steve lost his shit. He was freaking the fuck out. He realised that his wife, Amy, was the only reason why he was allowed to stay in this country. And the INS took Steve away literally the day that those papers were signed. Amy even went as far as to send me the ring camera footage of when the police turned up. And I'm not gonna lie, it was the funniest thing I have seen in a very long time. Can I just say, I think this might be the most savage of all of the story times I've ever done.
My mom told me for 20 years my dad was dead. Later, I found out he was alive, and I have 50 plus siblings. Growing up, I always remembered my mom being a single mom. I don't remember the exact moment she told me my dad was dead because I was so young. I have kind of always known. My mom told me that my dad died in a car accident 2 months before I was born. She said he was hit by a drunk semi-driver and was killed instantly on impact. Obviously, no one questions their own mother, especially at a young age. You believe their every word. This is what I always told people people growing up if they asked me about my dad. I would say I don't have a dad because he was killed. My mom took this lie so far to the point that even on financial aid papers, she claimed to be a widower. I never caught on to the lies, but when I asked questions, she said things that just made sense to me. Like, quote, "Mom, why don't you have any photos of dad?" She told me they all burned in a house fire started by dryer right after I was born. This made sense because we had moved to a new house when I was very young. I tried to research my dad and his death, but nothing ever came of it. I assumed because back in the day they didn't have computers or internet and nothing was online. I later found out his name was Donald, according to my birth certificate. I had to force my mom to give to me so I could get my license. A lot of the times I tried to ask more questions when I got older, but my mom became visibly angry when I did this. Eventually, I just stopped because I didn't want to get yelled at anymore. I tried asking family members questions and literally no one, even my grandma, knew. My mom and grandma are super close, so this was odd to me. Fast forward to when I was 19. I started to see a therapist after being a victim of attempted kidnapping and diagnosed with PTSD. The therapist told me to take a DNA test. I asked my mom to pay for it because I was a poor college student. She right away got so mad and yelled at me. She claimed that the government was going to clone my DNA and sell it, so I never ended up taking it. Fast forward to when I was around 20 years old, Thanksgiving time. My 3 friends and I had a fun day of baking cookies and talking all day long until I brought up the stories of my past and my dead father. I had a conspiracy I made up about my life totally as a joke. I told my therapist and now my friends, what if my mom had a one-night stand with a rock star and got pregnant with me? She never was able to find him again, so she couldn't tell him. My theory wasn't off too far. My family is extremely Catholic, so stay in the good graces of my grandparents. She made up a lie that she met someone, got married, got pregnant, and then her husband just happened to die right before I was born. But this is what really went down. I took a DNA test and then confronted my mom about it. She finally confessed that she always wanted to have a child, but never wanted to get married. She found a clinic that would do sperm donor babies. She had 2 miscarriages before me with all different donors. The 3rd time, she got pregnant with me. The name Donald came from the donor. There was no dad that died in a car accident. All lies. With my results from the DNA test, a girl messaged me claiming to be my half-sister. She was correct and introduced me in a group chat to the other siblings. This was 2 years ago, and we only had 30 half-siblings at the time. Now we are up to 50 and expecting more around Christmas time. We are from all over the country. As for my dad being alive, we found this out recently. After years of research and sleuthing, my sisters found our donor through leads from a DNA test. We have reached out to him, and he is grateful to know about us. We have limited contact due to his family and horrible wife. His wife wants to keep her good reputation. He never told his family about being a sperm donor in college because of his extremely Catholic family. I wish he would tell them and we could meet our cousins, aunts, and grandparents, but it's unlikely he ever will. If you made it this far, thanks for letting me share my story.
Honestly, I have just been outgrowing so many friendships. And it is a weird fucking feeling. Like, I've just been outgrowing people, places, and things that I genuinely thought I'd never outgrow. Well, obviously, it was the topic of therapy last week. And my therapist, she did give me a lot of insight. Obviously, that's what the fuck her job is. Sorry, I don't know why I got so mad. I was telling her, I was like, I'm just like not relating to them on topics that I used to feel like we used to relate on so much. To be really fucking honest, I just don't care about the bullshit drama either. Like, just little things where they're like, oh my god, guess what, guess what, guess what? And then they tell me and I'm like, that's what the fuck we're talking about? For so long, I tried to relate and I tried to go back into that place of like, no, like I get it. Like, I don't, just like the when I wasn't outgrowing them and it's like, no, I get it. And then it just got so annoying to me that I'd go to Sissy every time and be like, I literally can't fucking relate and I'm feeling just so annoyed. My therapist was explaining to me, she was like, just because you're entering a new chapter of your life doesn't mean they're going to come with you. Just because you're moving on to the next thing doesn't mean they're also at that point in their life where they're also gonna like move on to the next thing with you. Just because I'm at a different point in my life and I'm caring about different things and I don't give a fuck about the drama or like little things like that doesn't mean that they're going to be there with me. Not everybody's supposed to be in that next chapter, which is honestly a really hard thing to accept because I'm like, these are my people. Like, these are my people. They're supposed to be up there with me. Like, we're supposed to be doing this shit together. And it's like, no. The universe was like, no, bitch. Like, we have different plans for you. The thing is, it's like, I'm not ending friendships. I'm distancing friendships. I want that to be clear. My therapist was like, you're on a highway, like, you're going straight. They took an exit. They can come back and meet you, or they, like, might not. I would just say accepting that and coming to peace with that has been so fucking difficult. Like, I can't force anybody to come along with me, number one. And I also can't force myself to go back to who I was like 6 months ago when I did relate to these people just to relate to them, because then I'm stunting my own growth. I feel like I've spent the past 3 months allowing this to happen and like allowing the distance to happen, which normally I would like fight the distance, but clearly it's happening for a reason. And I don't want to hold resentment towards people either. I kind of was. I was like, why the fuck are you thinking like that? Like, what? But I wasn't saying that. I was just like saying that to Sissy, and she was like, Livy, you can't expect everyone to be where you're at. Like, that's so unrealistic. Yeah, I feel like the most important thing is it's like, you don't need to end a friendship. And I've ended friendships in the past, but those were mainly because they were toxic. And it's like, these people aren't toxic. We're just not on the same page right now. And the thing is, it's like, with new chapters of your life, you're gonna meet new people who are on the same page as you. And it's like, there will always be so much love there, always. And there will always be that like deep rooted friendship, but I can't just like sit and like force things to happen. Or like force things to go the way I want them to go, which is really hard for a bitch who has control problems. Like, I have severe fucking control problems, babe. I'm working on just allowing the distance and allowing the growth between the both of us. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't kind of scary, and I'd also be lying if I said it wasn't kind of sad. Nobody warns you or like teaches you how to outgrow people, kind of thing. And I was like texting mom, I was like, you're old, have you outgrown have you outgrown people? And like, what did that look like? What was that? He was like, yeah, and it's very normal. Like, don't get too harsh on yourself about it. It's been a hard realization, but I'm glad I came to it, you know? Because it helps me recognize who are my constant in this lifetime. Like, I have Sissy, you know. If you're outgrowing people and you're like feeling some sort of way about it, just let it happen. You don't need to force yourself to relate to them anymore. And if they're meant to be on your path, they'll be on your path.
My wife told my AP I'd rather be an 80-year-old me than a 20-year-old you, and it haunts me every day. My wife and I were high school sweethearts. We are both 40 and have been together for 25 years. We have 2 children together, 5 and 6. For the past 5 years, I have thought that we are together because we basically grew up together. I met my now girlfriend 28. I know I'm 12 years older, but I met her at work. She is beautiful and attractive, and I thought she was this new change I wanted. Instead of breaking it off with my ex and doing the right thing, I cheated and I got caught. My wife was so gracious about it. She didn't want us to be together anymore. This was a year ago, and I left our house and rented an apartment. We have yet to start a divorce, although I don't want to. Neither of us was talking about it. My girlfriend, however, is not so happy about this, mainly because I left our big house that was originally my house to my wife and our daughters. I inherited it from my grandparents, and it is worth a fortune right now. My girlfriend means that this is my family home, and for me, yes, it is. My family is living there. But my girlfriend meant that when we got divorced, my wife would have no claim to the house. 3 weeks ago, my girlfriend and I were dropping our daughters with their mother, and my girlfriend went against my wishes and started talking to my wife about the house. My wife was confused and said that the house was hers and her daughter's, and she looked at me all confused, but my girlfriend told her that it was mine, and it was time to move on. My wife then said that my girlfriend should put her nose in other people's business. Girlfriend became angry and said that my wife is a hag who is bitter because she's old. My wife smiled and said, "Is your age your only redeeming quality? Because that won't last." She said that she'd rather be an 80-year-old herself than a 20-year-old version of my girlfriend. She wasn't angry or bitter. She isn't old either. She's 40 like me. I'm so old, according to my girlfriend. She's very beautiful too. I don't know what my girlfriend was thinking. I felt so ashamed and angry with myself. My girlfriend was immature and embarrassing. I've been unhappy for months now, but if I broke it off, it means that I have hurt my family for nothing. Our wife called me the next day and said that maybe we should start talking about divorce. I broke down crying the moment we ended the call. Now, every time I see her, I want to be in her arms and cry. Just thinking about 80-year-old her with 80-year-old me beside her. The way we envisioned ourselves every time we saw an elderly couple holding hands or kissing, and we thought this would be us too. I realized I'd rather have an 80-year-old her than a 20-year-old anyone, but I have messed that up. Top comment here is, how's that midlife crisis working out for you? You do know that your girlfriend is a gold digger, right? She saw dollar signs and went after your old ass. Your wife is also correct when she said there's nothing else your girlfriend has other than her age. You made the mistake of betraying your family. Don't make the mistake of staying with her.
Would I be wrong for petitioning the courts for custody of my niece and nephew? I, a 35 female, have a brother Nathan, 37 male, who was a widower. My late sister-in-law Sarah was killed by a drunk driver 9 months ago. They had 2 kids together, Millie, 6, and Ryan, 9. My husband, 42 male Justin, and I have been helping my brother and our niece and nephew since my sister-in-law passed away. We have 3 kids of our own, and it's been nice to let the cousins hang out a bit more. My brother started dating Brittany, 26 female, about 6 months ago, and they are planning a wedding taking place first weekend of November. Lately, my brother has been dropping the kids off with us more and more for overnight stays, including school nights, so he and Brittany can go blow off steam. It's probably 4 to 5 nights a week at this point. I know people grieve differently, but this feels really fast. Millie and Ryan are also having a hard time as Brittany has moved into the house with them and started removing pictures of Sarah, their mom. Nathan told her not to do this, but she keeps going and pushing, saying things like, "It's time." Nathan and I have always been close, and Sarah was a sister I never had. I've talked to him a few times about moving too quickly with Brittany and maybe taking a step back and letting this grow. I told him that if he wants to marry her now, if she's really the one, that won't change with more time before a wedding happens. I've also talked to him about Millie and Ryan needing stability and their dad consistently because they are hurting and still processing. He told me I crossed the line with bringing the kids up and he was doing the best he can. Cut to yesterday. Brittany mentioned to Justin and I that Millie and Ryan would need to stay with us permanently once they have a baby so Nathan doesn't show favorites. I stared at my brother for a second and said this wasn't an appropriate conversation to have when the kids were in earshot. Brittany said she didn't care and wasn't looking forward to playing stepmom to the 2 brats. Millie and Ryan are great kids, but their world has been shattered with the loss of their mom, and now Brittany having moved in and apparently marrying their dad. I asked Nathan if we could speak privately, and Brittany butted in, saying anything I needed to say to him I could say to her. Against my better judgment, I said, "Fine, you're overstepping your place in this family and using my brother as a meal ticket. Those kids should come first." I thought her head was going to explode. She began yelling at me that I was selfish for not wanting my brother to be happy. I told her it was time to grow up and realize the world doesn't revolve around her. Nathan told me I was out of line and played the "that's my fiance" card before they both stormed out, leaving the kids yet again. He has yet to check in on them. At this point, I don't trust my brother's judgment and don't want to keep the kids, but Justin and I feel like we don't have another choice. I want to keep them safe and give them some stability. Would I be the asshole for petitioning for custody?
My sister sold my wedding ring so that she could pay for her honeymoon. Story time. So my sister and I literally never got along. She was literally always the golden child. She would constantly cry to my parents so that she could get her way. And my parents spoiled her like no other. Growing up, I literally hated the way she acted, but I tried to ignore it and just get on with my life. So one day when my parents were driving to work, they got in a really bad accident and we lost both of my parents. Of course, I was absolutely heartbroken, but in a way, I was kind of glad that there was no one there to spoil my sister anymore. However, sure enough, she found somebody else to leech on and she got a boyfriend. When she said jump, he said how high. And eventually they ended up getting engaged. Poor guy. And as you can probably imagine, my sister had big plans for this wedding. She got the most expensive dress, she got a massive venue, she got a caterer, went wild with the decorations, and she really wanted to cap it off with a honeymoon in Hawaii. With all the spending she'd been doing, she had run out of money. Did she call to bail her out? 10 points if you guessed me. She called me. My sister knew that I was doing okay, my husband was very well off, and she had the audacity to ask me if I would give her the entire honeymoon for her wedding present. And yeah, I could 100% afford it, but was I gonna do it? No. There was absolutely no way I was doing that for her, the way she treated me and my parents growing up. This woman begged and pleaded, but there was no way I was giving in. A few days later, I returned home from work, and you know when you just feel like something is off with your house? Realised that my ground floor window was open, and I literally never opened that window, so it was not me. I was looking around and pretty much everything seemed normal, but then I found my jewellery box and realised that quite a few bits were out of place. And that was when I realised that my wedding band and my engagement ring had gone missing. And let's just say, it didn't take me long to work out who the culprit was as to where it had gone. So I made sure not to confront her right away. I wanted to get evidence. I was taking pictures. I even bought a fingerprint kit. A fingerprint kit, that's hard to say. And I used that to test the area. All this happened a week before her wedding. So 7 days later, I attend the wedding without saying a single word to anyone. Wedding was really nice, but she spent a lot of money, so of course it's going to be nice. Then, the next day, she got on a flight to Hawaii, her dream honeymoon destination. Who was on the flight out afterwards? Me. So when I got into Hawaii, the first thing I did was get in touch with the police. And I gave them all the evidence that I had collected. They were able to confirm that my sister was in fact the crook based on her fingerprints. And when they asked me where they could find her, of course I told her, because she told me everything. She told me where she was going, what dinner reservation she was going to have, what hotel she was going to. So I made sure to arrive at this fancy restaurant at the same time as the police. I sat in the corner with like a proper little detective setup. I had a hat on, sunglasses, and I was snapping all of the pics. Ones of her getting into handcuffs. I got ones of her getting into the cop car. Just as she was looking out the window in the police car, she turned to me and I waved her goodbye. I wanted her to know that I was the one that had ratted her out. And as soon as I got back to my hotel, I sent all of the pictures to our friends and family. And now they no longer want anything to do with this pathetic little girl. Apparently her husband had absolutely no idea that this was going on. He was mortified by her behaviour and has left her already. And from what I know now, she lives in a tiny little apartment somewhere.
Yeah, ready with me as I talk about growing up with strict parents. Growing up with strict parents means you can't get away with a lot of things that other kids can, but more than that, there's completely harmless things other kids do that you just can't do. And, like, you have to explain to your friends that you can't do it, and they don't understand because it doesn't make sense. Shh. But the burden of explaining it is on you. So you just have a lot of really uncomfortable conversations as a child. Allow me to explain. I was not allowed to play with Barbies until I was like 11, which I would argue is probably an age where a lot of young girls are starting to phase out of Barbies. But because I had never been allowed to play with them, I was all for it. The reason I was told I wasn't allowed to play with Barbies before was because my parents were afraid that it was going to set an unrealistic beauty standard for me, and I was going to become, insecure about the way I looked, which is a valiant cause. I still developed body dysmorphia, and it had nothing to do with Barbies. I also wasn't allowed to watch a lot of, the same shows. I wasn't allowed to watch Powerpuff Girls because, I think my parents, they thought that they were, bratty or something, and it was going to be, a bad influence on me or something. But all it meant is that my best friend at the time, as a child who had Barbies and watched Powerpuff Girls, I couldn't do anything with. Having strict parents also means that instead of just agreeing to do something with your friends, you have to plan out with great strategy the way in which you are going to approach your parents to ask them if you can do the thing, when your other friends can just decide it amongst themselves and go do it. I also wasn't allowed to watch a lot of the Disney princesses growing up. I also wasn't allowed to watch a lot of Disney, mainly the Disney princesses, but anything that my parents felt had too much magic in it, or anything that they felt like was promoting something bad. Like Ariel, for example, I wasn't allowed to watch Ariel for a really long time because she's rebellious. I don't know if they thought it was going to open portals in the living room if we put on Sword in the Stone. Or what? But I didn't see a lot of them. I still haven't seen Sleeping Beauty. I saw Aladdin for the first time last year. That's really cute. A lot of the problems you get from this growing up is just social problem. You just don't understand a lot of the things your friends are into. And that's on strict parents.
I'm tired of being rejected sexually by my husband and want to try sex with another man, but I don't want to end my marriage. I, female 37, and my husband, male 39, have been together for almost 20 years and married for the last 10. We have a 3-year-old daughter. Early in our relationship, sex was frequent and adventurous. I always loved exploring my sexuality with him. I didn't have much experience sexually before we started, so our relationship pretty much defined who I am today. Sometime in the last 7 or 8 years, sex started to go from once or twice a week to maybe once a month, sometimes even less. I never push for sex, but every now and then I try to initiate with kisses and caresses, but the great majority of the times he simply pushes me away or responds in an angry mood. Over the years, I asked him if he didn't find me attractive, or if he didn't love me anymore, and he always answers that, of course he is. I've always been open in my communication with him and have made it clear many times how his constant rejection of me and the shaming of wanting sex impacts my feelings. In those moments, he shows that he cares, gives me an excuse about his work, his health, his stress, his tiredness, and says that he'll work on it. I suggest that we could seek an opinion from a psychologist or even a family doctor. We have the NHS, so it's free, but he got mad at me for suggesting. I thought that maybe when I was pregnant with my daughter 4 years ago, he had lost interest because of my weight gain. After that, maybe it was because our baby girl ruled our lives and she was born. But the reality is that the problem started before the pregnancy and is still there today. To be clear, I was fit before the pregnancy, then I worked on myself after the pregnancy. I'm elegant, fit, and I consider myself an attractive woman, enough to get attention from men in general, especially at work. I feel crushed inside. I have no self-esteem, no confidence, and I'm battling depression now because of this. I'm in constant emotional pain and anxiety when I sleep next to him, knowing that I can't have the man that I love and that I've chosen for my life. Worst of all, we have a daughter and my job doesn't pay enough for me to leave and keep her. But anyway, I want her to be with her dad. I feel that I desperately need to be desired by a man who then F's my brains out, at least once, at least one time, because I don't feel like a woman anymore. I deserve to feel that I'm desired and wanted by someone, but I don't want to leave my husband because I truly love him. I get constant advances from one person that I'm good friends with, and I know that we would keep it a secret. I have not reacted to any of that, but I'm tempted to. So, am I in the wrong?